and welcome everyone to Project Unknown. My name is Bradley, with me is Reanna. We're going to be explaining the Dyatlov Pass incident today. Pretty much what the show is that we take conspiracy theories. Reanna has got her conspiracy theory today, and we compete against each other week by week. Next week will be my turn, and then we'll go backwards and forwards. How you doing, Reanna?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, good. So pretty much we're going to talk about the Dyatlov Pass incident today. Can you give us a brief rundown of what that is?
Yes, so this is one of my favourite mysteries and conspiracy theories to look into. So that's why I chose it for our first episode. Now, what it actually is, the Dyatlov Pass is actually like a pass in the Ural Mountains in Russia. Now, it's called that because of a guy called Igor Dyatlov. Now, in the winter of 1959, 10 college students, led by Igor Dyatlov, ventured into the Ural Mountains for a 16-day ski expedition. They were extremely skilled hikers. What they were going to do is go over one of the passes and set up camp and then come back. Now, on the 28th of January, a member of their team felt ill, so he decided to turn around and head off home, where the 9 remaining students decided to go into the mountain and continue the expedition. Now, on the 1st of February, they set up camp for the last time. Now, on the 26th of February, the first lot of bodies were found. Now, on the 20th of Feb is when their families were like, oh, we haven't heard from them yet. So they got the rescue teams to go out and find the bodies. Now, the reason why this is such a mystery is because all 9 were found dead in the most crazy ways. So you've also looked into this a little bit, but you'd never heard of it before I mentioned it, had you, Brad?
Yeah, so I had never actually heard about the Dyatlov Pass incident before you explained it to me, and it sounded intriguing enough to actually have it as our first episode. I've got all my notes here. Do you want to just go into our first theory that you have written down?
Yeah, okay. So first we'll go through a little bit of how the bodies were found, as this does go into detail in the theories. So the first lot of bodies were found on the 26th of February.
That was after they had sent out the search party and that on the 20th, I think?
Yeah. So they sent out the search party on the 20th, and then on the 26th, they finally located the camp. Some of the bodies were not far from the camp. The first thing that they found was their tent that was half covered with snow and also torn open. Now, the most interesting thing about this is that it was torn open from the inside.
Yeah, so either they did it or something from the inside did it.
Exactly, and it looked like it was torn open with an implement like a knife or something. So I will go into it a little bit more as to why they could have done that. All their belongings, some clothes and some shoes, were left in the tent as well.
So a lot of them were barefooted and half nude and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been so cold.
Yeah, it was like minus 40 degrees Celsius is what they were saying it was.
Ouch.
So freezing. So there were some that were completely barefoot, some wearing one shoe. So really bizarre that they left all their belongings and shoes there. And then about half a kilometre away from that tent was evidence of a campfire and the first 2 bodies. Now, both of the bodies were only in underwear, so not wearing any clothes at all.
But that factors into the later on, right?
Yeah, no, there's definitely, there's a couple of theories that cover why they could not be wearing clothes.
And of the people that were found, these ones were the ones that died specifically of hypothermia. Am I correct?
Yeah. So these are the ones where they officially listed them as they died of hypothermia, as they were just in their underwear frozen in the snow. So on one of the sources that I was reading, one of them had actually bitten off a piece of his own knuckle.
Wow.
Yeah, which is pretty intense.
I did not know that.
Yeah, no, so that's one of the sources I found. So, yeah, could be a couple different reasons as to why, but yeah. And the tree next to them as well looked like it had been climbed by one of them, whether that was to try and get firewood for their campfire or to maybe see if they could locate the tent.
Or were they trying to get higher away from something else?
Yeah, or exactly. They could have been trying to get away from something. So, yeah, the tree near them definitely had evidence of humans climbing up it, because they were actually like bits of their skin and stuff found on the tree, which is a little dark. But then
I think when you have 9 people that all died, I think nothing about this is going to be lighthearted.
Yeah, no, that's true, I guess. Three more bodies were found shortly after, between the tree and the camp, so a little bit further away from the first 2 bodies.
But they're like varying distances, right?
Yeah. It was found just pretty much behind the tree, a couple 100 meters away. Now, Igor was found in this lot of 3 bodies. So he was, of course, the one that was leading the expedition. He was found barefoot and hugging a tree branch.
Well, that's what I would do if I was in the snow.
Yeah. Why not, I guess? But, no, he was found hugging a tree branch. The other bodies that were with him were seemingly trying to get back to the tent. So all their deaths were also ruled out as hypothermia.
So this is the first 5 that were found all ruled out as hypothermia. None of them had any foul play or anything like that as far as the coroner was concerned.
Yeah, as far as they were concerned, it was all hypothermia. One of the bodies that was found with Igor seemed to have bruising on her side, but whether or not that is just unrelated, because they were hiking for a couple days. But all their deaths were definitely ruled out as hypothermia. Now, this is where it gets really interesting with the next lot of bodies that were found. So they were found much later on May the 4th, and the remaining 4 bodies were found in a ravine. One of them had a fractured skull, one had a wound behind his ear and what seemed like a twisted neck, and the other 2 both had broken ribs. 2 of them had their eyes missing, and one had a missing tongue.
Wait, so both eyes missing?
Yeah.
And it wasn't the same person as the missing tongue?
No, so one of the hikers that had the missing tongue, her eyes were missing. So she had missed her eyes and her tongue, and her ribs were broken. And then another one of the hikers, a male hiker, had his eyes missing. Honestly,
I'm starting to question whether this was maybe just the plotline of The Mummy, where he had to like slowly take everybody's like body parts so that he could get himself back to what his original form was.
It honestly sounds like that. You've just watched The Mummy, haven't you?
Yeah, I watched it not that long ago. So everybody was found at this stage. All 9 hikers were completely found, but then 4 of them had very odd injuries.
Yeah. So all were found deceased, all with very bizarre injuries, or if not injuries, like not wearing clothes, in very weird positions, and all varying distances away from each other. So
I want to point out one bit of information that I found out about them, especially the 4 that were in the ravine. All the soft tissue stuff, apparently, according to the coroner and all that, apparently happened post their death.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to find out that none of those injuries happened due to them fighting to stay alive or anything like that. No,
so it happened after their death, which comes into play in a couple of the theories that I'm going to go over as well. Obviously, one of the most common things about, the missing eyes and tongue is just animals, because there would have been some animals out there like wolverines and things like that.
Well, are we talking like the X-Men character Wolverine, or?
Oh, he's up to some weird stuff if he was there, but Wolverines, not Hugh Jackman. And potentially some other animals, birds of prey. But again, I'll come up with a couple of things in the theories. Obviously, this is really shrouded in mystery, and there is so many theories for this particular case. There is a whole website just dedicated to theories alone.
Well, from what I can see here, the case was reopened obviously in 2018. And it was revealed by somebody from the Russian government that they have a undisclosed book of like 75 different theories that they had.
Yeah. So
which is interesting in its own part. Like why was none of that revealed? But I'm sure that we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy the amount of theories that they had, and they're only just starting to explore this all again because it was pretty hush-hush when it all happened. So let's jump into all of the theories that I have about this particular case.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear this. So what's theory number 1?
Okay, so I'm going to go from the least to the most likely.
Okay.
So I've gone through a whole bunch of the theories. Also, paired with a couple of the theories that I've had myself without looking into the theories first. And the least likely, I think, is Yeti. But this is a very popular theory.
Well, Yetis in general are a pretty popular thing, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Especially in this particular area as well. There was already rumours and myths of Yetis before this occurred.
So this is just kind of where the cryptozoologists and all that kind of hunt for the Yeti mainly.
Oh, yeah, no, there's definitely lots of sightings around this particular mountain range and things like that. So the Yeti is a popular theory because of especially the force of some of the injuries. So like the skull fracture and fractures to ribs, thinking a large animal could do that. So Yeti's definitely a popular theory. The hikers also took a photo of something that they saw in the trees that looks a lot like the Yeti or Bigfoot.
You say it looks a lot like a Yeti or Bigfoot. I've seen that photo. It just looks like one of the other hikers in the distance.
Maybe in a puffy jacket, but you got to admit it's sort of doing the Bigfoot pose in the photo.
I think every single photo of Bigfoot does that exact, or the Yeti or whatever. They all do that same pose, and it's just because somebody's just been like caught in the act of something, and they're like, ah.
Yeah, okay. They were all pretty young as well. Most of them were in their 20s, so it wouldn't surprise me if one of them was like, oh, pose like a Yeti. So that is one of the popular theories, but on my scale of theories, it's probably the least likely.
Well, we can't completely outrule it, though, because as you said, a lot of cryptozoologists and stuff like that have, I guess, I'm doing air quotes, evidence of Yeti activity and all that sort of stuff in those sort of areas. So when you think about it like that, there is always the possibility that something that we don't know, such as an abominable snowman or a relative of that sort of description, could have caused this incident. Because as you said, it was like an animal stuff in that taking the soft tissue from these hikers afterwards. We don't know what Yetis eat. Possibly humans.
Yeah, no, and definitely it's on my least likely, but it still made the list, which means that it's probable. Like I believe in Yetis, and I
who
think
doesn't?
And I think that of what happened, a Yeti could have spooked them. They could have cut their way out of their tent, and then he could have found the other 3 hikers and eaten their tongues and eyes.
Well,
we don't know.
What about if the Yeti hopped inside of their tent and clawed his way out? That's instead of it being a knife, it was actually like a claw that pulled down that tent. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other theories is just a wild animal, which could have gotten into the tent and sort of done it that way. But
look, to me, a wild animal is much less likely than a Yeti.
Fair.
We'll get into that later. Okay, no. so that was your least likely theory of all of them.
Yeah. So I do have about 4 or 5 theories written down that I'll go through briefly. But Yeti, least likely. The next one, I'm sad that it made my least likely list because I do love this theory, and that's aliens and alien abductions.
Okay, I do like this theory because I when I was doing the research for this thing, I started finding out about these orange glowing lights around that night.
Yes.
Do you want to explain a little bit further on that?
I will. So there were bright lights seen around the area where the hikers were from, obviously below on the mountain from villages. So many villagers had different experiences seeing these lights. They'd seen them before, but the night that the hikers potentially died, they saw these lights above the mountain. So that's where aliens sort of come into it. And then also the weird array of their bodies and of the missing body parts can sort of goes into an alien abduction theory as well.
But what I want to know is, why would aliens specifically steal a tongue? What is there, aren't they just doing all those probing and stuff like that?
Oh, you don't know what they could be studying. They might be studying human tongues and eyes.
But if they're studying tongues and eyes, would they not take it from everyone? Why would they only take it from specific people?
Yeah, which is weird, but maybe the others ran away and they just went after those 3 specific ones. Because it's interesting that the 3 that had the most severe injuries were all together, right?
Yeah, that's true. They did have the most, and they were away. But then, that still doesn't. I guess that doesn't really prove the fact that, like, why would they have tried to escape the tent if it was aliens?
Yeah, which sort of debunks that sort of theory. But also, like, yeah, tent cut from the inside. There's no other footprints around that area. It was only the hikers' footprints.
Oh, but if it's aliens, we don't know how they walk or talk or anything like that.
True, they could just hover or something.
Exactly, like it might be a flying spaghetti monster. We don't know. So when it comes to footprints and stuff like that, I doubt aliens which can travel from multiple different like galaxies and stuff like that are going to really come to Earth and be like, yeah, I'm just going to walk like these.
Yeah,
these
okay.
guys.
Fair enough. That's fair.
But it's still a theory, and that's what the show is all about. We're trying to find out theories, and we're trying to see what is the most likely. With aliens, I do like that because things going missing makes sense on a I guess a education standpoint. If they were trying to learn stuff about us, what would be the best way? You just take it from us. Like we're nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So I do like this theory, especially because the bright lights sort of, play into this theory pretty good.
But if I'm correct, I'm going to guess that something on your list when it comes to those bright lights has something to do with the military as well.
Yes, it definitely does. But I'm going to get to that because I have a lot of strong points on that particular theory.
I feel like that might be higher up on the list if I'm correct.
Definitely more than the Yeti and aliens.
Yeah, but Yeti and aliens just has like a nicer ring to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I'm pretty sure there's a movie based on this where it is a Yeti that goes after them. Definitely popular theories, Yetis and aliens.
Well, with it being such a popular incident and stuff like that, and seeing that it's been since 1959, I'm sure that there's plenty of pop culture and stuff like that that's probably referenced this incident and stuff like that. So I'm sure that if anybody wants to go and explore it or see more about it, I'm sure that there's plenty of information, probably fictional information, about this incident itself. Anyway, so you were saying, so are we going on to theory 3?
Yeah. So we're going to go on to the next. I'm going to do 2 theories in one just because they're similar to each other as to why they would leave the tent. Now, the first one is an avalanche. This theory could make sense as to why there was snow on top of the tent, why they had to leave in a hurry, so why they weren't wearing all their clothes or all their shoes, and why they had to get out of the tent. But one of the reasons to debunk this theory is the area is not prone for avalanches. You could see their footprints. If there was an avalanche, their footprints would most definitely be covered. And the tent wasn't fully covered in snow, only partially. Where if it was an avalanche, you think that it would fully cover that whole area. And also, the really, really, the bodies that were found that were really badly damaged, like an avalanche wouldn't have been able to create that much damage to only 3 people and not the rest.
Are you sure that like an avalanche wouldn't steal somebody's eyes and tongue?
Well, maybe in the Dyatlov Pass, who knows?
Yeah, like there's some crazy stuff going on in the Ural Mountains. We don't know.
Yeah. So that's one of the theories that I don't think is very probable is an avalanche. And another reason they could leave the tent that I'll touch on quickly is infrasound, which is, one of the other theories why they could have left the tent. Do you know what infrasound is? Have you heard of that before? I
have heard of it, but why don't you explain it?
So it's a low-frequency sound that can be produced by wind, particularly like at high speeds going through mountain ranges and things like that. And it can it's known to cause panic attacks. So one of the theories was that this wind was going through the pass at the time, and it's created this infrasound, which has made them just want to get out of the tent and want to escape that sound as quick as they can. So that's why they left. And then the theory is that they all left at different rates because they were having panic attacks, and then they couldn't find their way back to the tent because it was dark. So that's why a few of them died of hypothermia. And then the theory of the other 3 tried to make a makeshift shelter out of rocks, and in that case fell down into the ravine, and that's how they got those injuries. So that's another theory.
Okay, so in my research, these chest injuries and these skull injuries and all that sort of stuff, apparently, according to like the research and that people have done into it, the injuries were as if like a car had hit you. Like that's how much of an impact that you would have had to have that sort of happen. Even if you try to make a structure out of rocks or something like that, or fell into the ravine or whatever like that, I still don't feel like that would be enough pressure to do what they're trying to, they say has happened to these guys though, right?
Yeah, no, okay, I totally get that. That makes sense, because I did read that somewhere, that's how crazy the amount of pressure would have had to been. So that makes sense.
And on top of that, it couldn't have been because from what I've read and all that sort of stuff, specifically when it comes to that, they say that all of this stuff was internal. So the cracked skull, the chest stuff and all that was all internal. There was no external showings of it. If there were, if they had fallen or they had done something like that, they would have ended up with bruising, which is an external factor.
Yeah,
the fact that they
right.
didn't have it, the fact that they didn't have any bruising or anything like that happen to them means that force and pressure had to have been put to them.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. That makes sense.
So it's interesting in that fact that they couldn't have just been hit by something or anything like that. It almost must have been something like, let's say this infrasound thing happened and they were causing a panic attack. Imagine the wind had created such a force and hit them to the point where their chest had like exploded, as has been described. That's more of a theory than them just falling into the ravine, I guess.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that actually did come up in one of the theories, is that high winds blew a couple of them like off of their feet. That is in one of the theories. So
that is a possibility, that the actual wind itself, because I guess like anybody that's listening, if you don't know what is happening, it's a wind tunnel effect. So in this pass and the ravine and stuff like that, wind is just getting pushed so heavy into this one area that the wind is just traveling at such high speeds. It's almost like as fast as the wind going past the wing of a plane. So when somebody gets hit by that sort of stuff, they have this infrasound phenomena happen, which causes the panic attacks, and then they go outside. They're just hit like a ton of bricks as soon as they're outside, causing these injuries. So it's a possibility that out of everything, wind could have done it.
Yeah, no, it definitely would make sense as to the extent of their injuries too. So yeah, that's definitely one of the theories, and that's why it is a little higher up on my list as well.
Compared to Yetis and aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Maybe aliens caused the wind. We don't know.
And we probably never will, but that's why we're discussing it right now on this podcast.
Exactly.
Now, before I get into my number one theory, I will mention one of the other theories was drugs. So they
just wanted a wild night out in the Ural Mountains. Just why not?
Yeah, pretty much. The traditional people of the land, the Mansi people, they used to partake in shrooms. And one of the theories is that the hikers got the shrooms from the Mansi people, and they just had them and had a bad trip, bad hallucinations, which would again explain why they're getting out of the tent quickly, why they're running away. But then also the tongues and the eyes thing comes into effect, because that happened after they died. So it's a bit weird.
The interesting thing about was it the 4 that were found in the ravine?
The
3.
The 3 that were found in the ravine.
3 that were found in the ravine. Is just the fact that they like the wind and that causing panic attacks and like the drugs creating like hallucinations and stuff like that. That lends to the theory of the fact that they were found with pieces of clothing from the dead guys who were died of hypothermia.
Yeah.
Because if it's that cabin fever thing where you're stuck in such a small area, and when you start going insane, whether it be from panic or it be from drugs or anything like that, you start seeing everybody as your enemy.
Yeah.
It definitely drugs and wind definitely lend to the fact that they were found with pieces of clothing from the other humans.
Yeah, no, for sure, and that's why. It is a popular theory, is that they did take drugs and just went crazy pretty much.
But at what stage did they have enough time to, I guess, meet up with the Mansi? Is that the tribe?
The Mansi people, when they were traveling to the mountains, they did go through a couple of villages. So
okay.
It is possible. But then one thing I didn't mention in the intro was that where they were camping, they weren't meant to make camp there. This was on the side of a mountain, which is not a great place to make camp.
Because they were meant to be at the other side of this pass by the time that the night was meant to hit, right?
Yeah, exactly. And severe weather, a snowstorm, basically blew them off track, and they had no choice but to set up camp. So the fact that why you're in this dire situation on the side of a mountain in a snowstorm, why would you take drugs, is like one of my things as to why this theory doesn't make a lot of sense.
Honestly, though, like, what better time to take drugs?
Yeah, again, they might have really wanted to take drugs to sort of
I
forget
just want
the
to say
fact that
this,
they're...
while we're talking about this, kids, don't do drugs.
Yeah, no, don't do drugs. It's
Don't
bad.
do drugs.
Because if they did do drugs, look what happened.
You might find yourself in the middle of the Ural Mountains being attacked by Yetis, wind, and aliens. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so again, popular theory, but there's a few reasons as to why.
Why it can be debunked, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm up to the most probable. This is the theory that I think makes the most sense.
Russians.
The military. So pretty much, now there's a whole website onto why the military was responsible for this. Now, there is the theory that they stumbled into a testing area. So where they were was a cliffside when people don't go. They weren't meant to go there. That's the whole thing. They accidentally were taken off trail by weather. They had to set up camp, and they might have stumbled into a secret military testing area for mines or missiles or something like that. So the hikers cut their tent to get away from explosions or bright lights, which comes into the bright lights that people saw. So there's a type of mine called a parachute mine, and basically it like parachutes down and then detonates in the air. So there wouldn't be anything left over. And one of the theories is that they saw these bright lights, they heard the noise, they escaped the tent, and obviously couldn't find their way back. And the injuries that the other hikers got could be from these mines that detonated. So the military testing area and mines is definitely up there in theories, especially because this is probably my favourite fact about the whole thing. Their clothes were positive for radioactivity.
So I read a bit of information about this.
Yes.
You say their clothes were found about that. Only one of them was.
Yeah, so one of their clothes was positive for radioactivity, but also so were some of the boots, but none of their equipment was. There's the whole thing as to why is radioactivity only affecting a couple of things.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting when you look at it like that, because if there was radioactivity and all that sort of stuff on people's clothes and boots and stuff like that, especially the boots that were left behind in the tent, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Why wasn't, like, it's a material thing then, but then why wasn't the tent radioactive?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really, really bizarre that only a couple of items were found radioactive. And I read a little bit into that, but there isn't a lot of theories as to why only a couple of items would be radioactive. Because if there was radioactivity in the area, everything would be radioactive, surely.
Exactly. Like you would... Yeah, like you would probably feel it when you walk into that sort of area if it was that radioactive. But the thing is, when it comes to the Russian military and stuff like that, because it is Russian, yeah. They've literally come out with their I know that this kind of doesn't go with the conspiracy theory, but the Russian government and stuff like that have presented journalists with their classified documents relating to the case.
Yeah.
And have assured that they have nothing to do with it. Like, I know if the government had anything to do with it, they would probably keep it covered up anyway. But, like, when it's, like, that far away from the incident, you'd feel like you'd just be able to let the world know. Yeah,
I don't know. I really think that if it was the military, I don't think they would say anything, because a lot of the villagers, a lot of the family members as well, were, like, pretty certain that it could have been the military. As well as, did you say they released the book with all, like, the conspiracy theories of what it could be?
The Russian, where are we? They had a large book that was released by the authorities that had 75 versions of what could have allegedly happened. And they 100% apparently ruled out that it had anything to do with the Russian government.
Yeah, but if they're the ones that, like, released the book, do you think they did it just to prove that it wasn't them? They're like, look at all these other reasons it could have been. It definitely wasn't us.
No, like, at that stage, if I was part of the Russian government, I'd just be like, yeah, it was Yetis.
Yeah, yeah, right? It was the Yetis. The Yetis and the aliens teamed up, and they did it.
Because when you think about it, like, how do you get more tourism? You just say that there's Yetis out there. You got all the cryptozoologists coming around.
Right.
Like, you got tourism coming in. You've got a reason that it wouldn't be the Russian military. There's so many reasons behind this that you'd be able to use it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I really do think that the military was involved in some way, because also the bodies look like they were manipulated. There's a couple of reasons, like, why they think they were manipulated. The fact that all three were super close in the ravine, next to each other. The fact in, like, a lot of the coroners were saying the way blood vessels were settling looks like they were moved after they died. So, yeah, there's a couple of things saying that they were manipulated, and the whole thing with the missing eyes and the tongue, you know, they could have set up to pretend it was wild animals or something like that. I don't know. I just really like this theory that it could have been something to do with they wandered into a military testing site accidentally.
So, with it being Russian military, though, like, we have to think about it on the sense of, even if they wandered in here, why would the Russian military want them gone? Like, what did they see that caused the Russian military to go, oh, yeah, we need to get rid of these guys?
Yeah, I don't know. It could have been that. Could have been the fact they were fleeing the mines and just died of hypothermia, and those three might have saw something that the rest didn't see. I don't know. This case is definitely completely shrouded in mystery, and I think that's why it is so popular to make theories about this and to research into it.
Well, it's really interesting because in 2018 it was reopened. This case was reopened.
Yeah.
And it's still open today. Like, it is still from 1959 to today. There is still people trying to work out what happened. Like, there is a lot of conspiracy theories out there that people are trying to prove or disprove or whatever like that. But the fact that this is such an old case, and still cannot be proven one way or the other. It's interesting that that these sort of cases and stuff like that continue to today.
Yeah, no, definitely. They're still trying to figure it out. And in the end, their official death was listed as a compelling natural force. So that's what it was, like, officially listed as, which is crazy.
As we say, well, like, that sort of stuff happens here and there, so we can't say it isn't. But I do want to point out, in my research, when it came to the military, there was something that came out more recently, especially in the reopening of the 2018 case, that a police officer, Lev Ivanov, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correct, was apparently told by high-ranking officials to stand down after reports of the orange lights were given. So he was told to completely disregard anything about the orange lights by high-ranking officials in the area. So that kind of lends credence to the fact that it was Russian military. Because if high-ranking officials are coming around going, hey, just ignore all the stuff about orange lights, thank you.
Ignore those lights up there, which is, again, why I feel so strong about that, because of those lights, because that would make so much sense.
Yeah, and this brings me to a little bit of information as well that is super intriguing to me and kind of lends to the Russian military, but also completely changes the whole idea of it, which is Semyon Zolotarev, or it's pronounced a few different ways in different bits of pieces of information, that he died on his birthday at 38, but then recently his body has been exhumed and his DNA was tested to living relatives, and the person that's been buried that had the name Semyon isn't the same guy.
What? I didn't see that.
Yeah, so there's information about
wow.
On the where is it? On the 12th of April 2018, it was revealed it wasn't him that was actually buried in Semyon Zolotov's grave. It was actually somebody else who possibly used his name after World War II.
No way, that's insane.
So when you're thinking about it like that, that means that he was Russian military.
Interesting.
This person that was under that pseudonym. and that person that was actually buried wasn't the same human.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, it does lend a little bit to Russian military being involved, but then why was this random guy not using his real name?
That's super interesting. That could bring up like just a whole different load of theories.
Which I'm sure in the future, seeing that was in 2018, I'm sure that they're still trying to research it, and especially after they exhumed his body and doing DNA tests, that they're probably still going to try and work out who this human is. Like, who was he?
Wow.
Why was he on this expedition? What was going on there?
Because he was also the oldest who went, right? Everyone else was in their 20s.
Exactly. He was 38 when he died. He apparently died on his birthday, but this person that died doesn't have that birthday. So it's really interesting on that aspect of what was he doing on this trip.
Yeah, wow. That's so bizarre.
It kind of adds a whole nother theory to it, that what if this was just like pretty much just a guy wanting to go out and murder some people?
Yeah, and do you know what? One of the theories, I didn't put it on my list, although I was going to, was that they were murdered. And there is a lady who did research into this whole incident for years, and she was like, no, they were definitely murdered. And she has all this evidence that lines up, which is, yeah, interesting. So you know what? It's a possibility for sure.
Yeah, so it's especially when there's a person that wasn't going by his actual name that was involved, and then like the tent being cut open and all that. But then why didn't he have a backup plan? If he's also one of the dead and he was on a murdering spree, why? It just doesn't make sense to me why he would also die of. What did he die of? He was one of the ones who died of chest trauma, and he had his eyes missing.
Yeah, which is like, why would he go all the way up into the mountain where you can't get down easily to just murder all of these people?
And then why was he the one that had the eyes missing and all that sort of stuff? You know what I mean? Like, he was one of the ones that got injured the most.
Yeah. And like the eyes missing after death as well is an interesting one.
Exactly. Like,
especially for him.
If there was a murderer amongst them, like, why was he, like, if he was the murderer, let's say, why was his eyes the ones that were taken? You'd think that would have been somebody else that would have been in that thing. But I do want to talk about Yuri Yudin, Yudin, however you pronounce his name. They're all Russian. I'm Australian. It's hard to pronounce.
These names are very hard to pronounce, which is why I haven't been saying them, because I just don't want to, like, completely butcher their names.
Exactly, yeah. He was the one who left due to illness.
Yes.
One of the luckiest human beings ever, you got to admit.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That he wasn't involved in this. But then it goes back to they were meant to call in on the 12th of February, a telegram saying, hey, we made it, we're all good. But then apparently, and this is only according to Yuri, that he was told by Dyatlov that it might take longer, and that's why it wasn't until the 20th of February that search parties and all that were even sent out, because the families finally just got concerned that nobody had rocked up. So it's interesting when you think about that. Like, Yuri, who lived for years and years and years, just randomly didn't inform anyone that he hadn't heard anything.
Yeah, which was interesting. I did read about that too.
If he was involved with Semyon or the AKA Semyon guy, we don't know what may have happened. It may have been a dual thing. But that's enough of the theories. Like, we've talked about all the different ways that these guys could have died or been murdered or been taken out by Russian military or something like that. I want to know what you're, like, most likely. You're saying that it's Russian military.
Yeah, no, I'm when I first read about this case, quite a few years ago, I found it, and I just went crazy, like, researching it and looking into everything. I was definitely like, it's aliens. It has to be aliens, because I like looking into the bright lights and all that stuff, but doing more and more research, and especially now, I really think it has something to do with the military. Whether or not that guy with the fake name was involved or not, I really think the bright lights on the night, like, they supposedly died, is just too much of a coincidence. The radiation, even though it was only in like, you know, a specific area, I still think has a lot to do with how it could be the military. And yeah, I just really think it has something to do with a military area that they just stumbled into accidentally. I'm pretty set in that theory.
Well, all the things that you just listed, though, lights and all that sort of stuff, they also lend themselves to the alien theory, though, don't they?
Yes, I guess they do, which is why I was so stuck on aliens for so long. So I guess maybe, like, because I believe in aliens. Like, I'm definitely a conspiracy theorist.
We're doing a conspiracy theory podcast. I feel like we all believe in aliens.
We all believe in aliens.
If you're listening to this, you probably believe in aliens. Let's be honest. If you don't believe in aliens, then I don't know. Like, we're not the only people out there.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, definitely. If you're listening to this, you should believe in aliens because they're real, definitely. But anyway, I digress. I guess maybe it's like the part of my brain that's like, but what if it's not aliens? It could be military. So I guess maybe my main theory is aliens, but my logical brain is, but it could be the military because a lot of things add up to the military. So let's go with aliens or the military. That's my theory.
Those are your top two, like aliens or
those are my top two.
Even though you aliens were second to the bottom originally,
they were.
You're now back up there with Russian military and aliens.
I am. I put them up there because after discussing everything, you've made me realize, like, no, you are right. Maybe I should have stuck with my original theory that I had all those years ago.
Well, it's even possible that the Semyon guy may have been an alien. We don't know.
He so could have been. You're going to make me just research this all again, looking at it from, like, the alien standpoint.
Oh, 100%. And we'll probably come back to this this theory at some stage once we both have a little bit more information as well. I'm gonna stick by my guns, though, and say that it was Yetis with fireworks.
Yeah, okay. I thought you were going to say Yetis. I was expecting that.
Well, Yetis with fireworks, creating the orange license, that sort of thing. Like, well, humans have, like, dressed up as Yetis and all that for so many years. Like, why can't a Yeti have dressed up as a human and pretended to be them after World War II?
So you think that the guy with the fake name was a Yeti in disguise?
Yes. Yes, he was.
All right, that's your main theory? Sure, you can add that to the... I'm
going to say 100% that is the main theory, and that I'm going with my gut on this one.
All right, we'll add it to the theory website. I'm sure they'd be keen to see it.
I'm sure that they'll absolutely love my attention when I bring in that theory. Well, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Like, I'm sure that we'll get more into this later on as we continue this podcast. It's my turn next week, and I hope that I can live up to the legend status that is the Dyatlov pass incident.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting one, and definitely why I brought it up. And because you hadn't heard of it, I was like, oh, good, because I literally tell everyone about this because it's just so interesting. So I'm very excited to see what you come up with next week.
Oh, I'm gonna have to bring my A game next week's conspiracy theory. Well, we're going to end it there. If anybody ever has any ideas of theories or conspiracy stuff that we should look into, write it down below. Any information that we have looked into, websites and all that, I will put down in the description below. Thank you, Reanna, for bringing this to my attention.
No, all good. Thank you for discussing it with me and listening to my theories.
Well, thank you for listening, guys, and we will bring the next conspiracy theory next time.